Well, thanks for having us. This is pretty cool. It's great to be here and get to share with all of you some of the great work that the Mac at IBM team has been doing at IBM, and they're all here in the audience, right up here in the front row. So when we get to the Q&A section, anything that's kind of beyond my depth, this is the team that can answer pretty much any question you may have. Just to tell you a little bit about IT at IBM and then the Mac at IBM program. This is the stuff that is in the portfolio of Workplace as a Service. So it's all the laptops, so the Linux, PC, Mac, the mobile devices, which would include the corporate-owned assets as well as the BYO program, the Mac at IBM program, which is mostly what we're going to talk about here today, the help desk, which is always exciting, the intranet. We do have a mobile development team in the department because they build what we kind of jokingly refer to as the state-sponsored apps, the things that everybody needs, but none of the business units are really incentivized to develop, so employee directory and things like that. And then the long tail of things that would kind of fall into the collaboration bucket, file sync and share, managed print service, email, collaboration, all those kind of tools. So that's kind of the tactical, that's the what. But just said a lot more simply, our job is to create a productive environment for IBMers where great people want to come to work and we can attract and retain top talent. And Dean talked a little bit about culture, which is something I'm really going to focus on here because, ultimately, eventually, people will copy technology. That's just kind of what happens. But it's the culture of the place that is really the only unique thing you have and is the thing that's really difficult to copy. It's not easy to get the operational excellence of a GE, or how does Amazon go from selling books to being a cloud services provider? Because they have a good culture of solving problems. So the what that you're working on will change all the time, but the how and the who, that's really kind of the secret sauce. And so we really view the Mac at IBM program as driving culture transformation as IBM pivots to a more agile enterprise. A little bit about me, just as some quick background. So I've actually spent most of my life in the Microsoft world. I'm relatively new in this role at IBM. And prior to being at IBM, I was at Walmart.com, where I managed the Windows infrastructure, so things like Active Directory, SharePoint, Exchange, DNS, DHCP, Wins, the whole kind of stovepipe Microsoft stack. But it's fair to say I was an early Apple adopter. That's me a long time ago, 1985. I actually had gotten a Mac in 1984, and so I think by the time birthday rolled around, they were kind of like, well, what's the thing he loves most? It's the Mac. And so the cake maker had never seen a Mac, so it says Macintosh, but it looks like an Apple IIe, but we let that slide. And then this was kind of neat. The circle of life is complete. I have now met Tim Cook and been in Cupertino, and so that was kind of a cool thing that happened. So a little bit about kind of what we face every day from an IT perspective at IBM. We are a relatively large organization, about 400,000 full-time regular employees. At any given time, a contingent workforce of somewhere around 130,000 contractors, 100,000 plus business partners, operating in over 170 countries. And then the thing that's kind of really interesting for us in IT is 40% of those 500,000 plus people will never come into a traditional IBM office. And that's either because they're working at home or they're co-located out with customers as part of IBM's strategic outsourcing business. But it does present some kind of unique challenges from IT. A little bit more about just kind of, the size of IT, about 9,000 printers worldwide, just under 150,000 mobile devices under management, about 2.5 million help desk tickets a year, and 618,000 laptops under management. So here's a little bit of a closer look at our mobile footprint today. You can see probably this looks a lot like what a lot of you probably see in your environment. Over time, we see more iOS, we see less Android, and we see BlackBerry really kind of disappearing. I mean, now it's down to a almost statistically irrelevant number. It's less than 1%. It's a couple hundred devices. The problem is the people who have the BlackBerries all outrank me, so I can't take them away. But what we do is we give them an iPhone and we say, we're not going to take away the BlackBerry. We know you love it. It's got the keyboard or whatever the reason is. But here's this iPhone as well. And so then we come back in 6 months and we go, hey, how's that BlackBerry working out? Oh, I don't use it. Here, you can have it. So that's kind of the approach. But anyway, we do project seeing continued growth of iOS, which makes me happy because that's just easier for us to manage from a security and an enterprise perspective. Setting aside the religious debate for a second, I mean, it just is easier for us to deal with. And so, next year will probably be somewhere around 75% iOS. And that's largely a reflection of BYO and preference really shifting towards iOS. We do track also on a weekly basis, both the installed mobile apps as well as the ones that are actively used on a weekly basis. So about 315 mobile apps are in our internal app catalog. And it's nice to kind of track, installed is one thing, used is quite another. And that helps take a lot of the emotion out of some of these discussions with senior people's pet project for a mobile app. Because you can really see which ones are people actually using and which ones maybe are just kind of dying on the vine. A little bit of a deeper breakdown of what that looks like, the 149,000 mobile devices. You can see it's about 60,000 iPhones, about 41,000 iPads, about 3,400 iPad minis. And then the geography preference. In all geographies, it is still a iOS bias, but in some more pronounced than others, North America, Japan, and that's probably pretty similar to what everybody here sees. That's kind of like what the market shows. So let's talk about the Mac at IBM program. There had, I think, always been quite a lot of built-up demand for people that wanted to use Macs at IBM, and we certainly in IT wanted to be able to offer Macs to people. But outside of a very small group of designers or people who write software for the Mac, we really didn't allow people to get one from IBM. You could BYO one, but it was kind of at your own risk. It was like, well, you can use it, and if it works for you, that's great, but you can't really call us if there's a problem. And when we tried to look at, well, could we make Mac a standard offering for IBMers, the status quo that I'm sure a lot of people in this room have heard is the Macs are more expensive. Any number times 618,000 is a big number. That gets the attention of our CFO. They're going to be difficult, expensive to support. That's not really in our wheelhouse. We don't have that skill. We don't really know how to do that in a way that makes people feel comfortable. We can keep the place secure. We'd have to refactor the whole application portfolio. If I had $1 every time I've heard that. And we'd have to retrain the help desk, and it's going to cost X millions of dollars, and it's going to take this many months. By the way, we're focused on cost takeout at the moment, not driving incremental expense. And yeah, we get that Macs are nicer. We're not idiots, but we wish we could do it, but we just can't afford it. So I don't know, does that sound familiar to anybody in this room? Yeah. So we had an opportunity to spend some time with Apple, and they graciously said to us, if it would be interesting to you, why don't you come out and spend some time with IS&T in California, and don't come for a briefing, but really embed with us and maybe spend a fair amount of time and see if there are any best practices that would be helpful for you to bring back to IBM. And when we started talking to Apple, this was just kind of an offer out of kindness that they made from one IT department to another. It was really outside of the go-to-market partnership between IBM. And we were talking to them about a number of things about Wi-Fi and VPN and seeing if there were some tips and tricks that we could bring back to IBM. But one of the things we saw there was, Apple's interesting. They're a lot more similar to IBM than you might think. They're 100,000 employees. They're a tier 1 credit card processor. They handle a lot of customer data, transactional data. They got retail stores all over the world where people wander in off the street and connect to their Wi-Fi. So they have real enterprise problems. But they were managing a large number of people and devices with a significantly fewer set of resources than you would expect to see in a traditional PC environment. And so that was really interesting to us. How are they doing that? And what is their approach to that? And so what we came away with was, this is what we think we saw at Apple, and this is what we wanted to bring back to IBM and see if we could make that work for us. And it was really this kind of three-pronged approach of give people the right devices, in this case Macs and iOS devices, and manage those assets in a modern way. So not the 1999 Windows XP Altiris agent lockdown model, but manage your mobile device, or manage your laptop in a way that's a lot more familiar or consistent with the way that a mobile device is managed today. Things like cloud-based provisioning, zero-touch enrollment, app stores, user profiles. Can I throw that laptop into the ocean and go buy another one and have everything magically reappear on it? And then drive self-sufficiency and simplification in the environment such that people are just not having as many problems and don't have as many reasons to call the help desk. So that's things like simplifying the support portal, creating productivity apps for people, making things easier, the Wi-Fi, the VPN, all those kind of elements, and allowing people to be more self-sufficient where they can self-solve problems. Because people don't aspire to call the help desk. That's not like something you hope for in the morning. And then, and if you did those things correctly, that you could then afford to staff a different kind of help desk with people that are qualified and actually know how to solve the problem. And because you just have fewer problems coming into it, you can measure that help desk totally on CSAT, as opposed to number of tickets closed and speed to closure, which drives behavior like, hi, how can I help you? We don't support that problem. Is there anything else I can help you with? I'm closing the ticket. That's not what we want. What we want is, I don't care if it's IBM owned, personally owned, supported app, not supported app, the problems come to our door. We will take as long as is necessary to get you productive. And by the way, this model also says, if somebody calls in on something where the fastest way to resolve it, like a password reset, is just to reset the password, that you would take the 10 minutes to show the person how to do it themselves, and that way if they have the problem again, they don't need to call in, but even better, if the person next to them has that problem, they can help each other. So a very different model from, I think, a traditional help desk. And that's what we tried to bring back to IBM and call the Mac at IBM program. So when we say Mac at IBM, it really, and you'll see in a minute, it involves a lot more than just giving people Macs, right? If we just buy Macs and support them the way we support PCs, that's not what we're going for. But like a lot of you, we are a financially disciplined company and data-driven. And so we said, we need to find a way that we can do this cost neutral to IBM, and these are the things that we will measure as we look at this. And so we thought, well, you will need fewer support people. The ratio of support staff to supported personnel ought to be better. The machine costs more, but it also depreciates differently and holds its value differently. So that's something we would take into account. And then a long list of things like, number of calls to the help desk, number of virus infections, number of warranty claims, number of battery replacements. What is the cost avoidance of things we don't have to do on the Mac that we do have to do in the traditional environment, like disk encryption, antivirus, software imaging and preloading? What is the cost to cascade the machine from one employee to another? And that formed the basis of the business case, which is there'll be some investment. It is a new program. We have to buy some software, stand up some infrastructure, hire people, which was a really important decision point where we said, this is so different from what we've done in the past. And the Mac is different. People have an emotional response to it, whether you support it or use it. And we thought that's really the people that we need to hire and get involved. And so we would need to staff people. So that was kind of the investment side. And then there would be a mixture of hard and soft benefits. The hard ones I kind of went through a minute ago. And we do try to keep it primarily a hard benefit business case, because the soft benefit, even though it's real and it's very significant here, that is just a more difficult conversation to have with finance. But it is part of the equation that says this is something people want. It makes them happier. It makes them more productive. And increasingly, we see it as a competitive disadvantage not to allow employees to have choice in this space, right? If you're a talented software engineer, we see a lot of people that say, as a condition of employment, I want to have a Mac. So when we started, we said, what would success look like? And you saw Dean's post-it note. We didn't put a heart on this one, but we still thought success would look like if you got a Mac at IBM, that it would be in a shrink-wrapped box, because we're not going to use an image, and there would just be a sticky note on it with a URL, and that would be the sum total of the instructions that you would need to get your Mac up and running, which, by the way, is very different than the process that has existed in the past, right? You would think it would be kind of a happy event for people when they get a new laptop. That's not always the case. Oh, here we go. I got the email, and now I'm going to have to do this data transfer, and I'm going to hold on to the old one for a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months, maybe forever, and IT will forget about it. So we thought that would be a successful end state. What we learned was through Casper and Apple's device enrollment program, we could actually go one better and not even have that instruction, right? All you really have to do is turn it on. Now we do have a process that if it's not a DEP enrolled Mac, that you can initiate the exact same enrollment process manually just by going to a URL in Safari, but we were able to leverage the device enrollment program, and this is what we launched with on June 1st, where we opened it up to all employees to have choice and said, if you're due for a new machine and you wish to have a Mac, you can have it, and this is what the process looked like on June 1st. We were really thrilled with it. It worked. We didn't need to have an image, because all of the things that you would normally traditionally do in the context of an image, we were doing at time of enrollment with Casper. And then at the end of it, we would display this picture and say, here are all the things that we did. We installed Lotus Notes, same time, the VPN client, put the Wi-Fi certificates on, set the password policy, turned on disk encryption, installed Java, et cetera, et cetera. But there were some rough edges, and if you had a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro 15, the size of this window was not always correct, and maybe there'd be a reboot in the middle, and you didn't exactly know how long you were going to be sitting there. And so the team that's here that you'll get a chance to ask some questions of has really done a fantastic job of continuing to iterate and work in an agile way. And every 2 weeks, this program improves with each sprint. And one of the newer things they've done is this is now what the enrollment process looks like, where the screen dynamically resizes to the size of the equipment that you're using. There's a progress bar. It cycles through those tabs and advertises both what it's doing, but also how you engage with us for support. And I actually have a time-accelerated video of this, which if people want to see, I'm happy to show. So here you see somebody logging in. It says, it went kind of quickly, but it found the IBM profile, because this is a device enrolled machine. You log in with your IBM intranet ID and password through SAML. We don't bind to Active Directory. It's just a local account. Put in the password. And really, we were trying to sort of keep, how do you maintain that same kind of MacBuddy experience in the enterprise enrollment experience? So it's going to reboot here to turn on the disk encryption. Now you see the enrollment screen and the progress bar, and it's pretty obvious to the end user what's happening. Yes, it's now officially supported. Here's what will happen next. Here's what we're doing. Then you see the self-service app comes to the forefront. And then you get the screen that says you're now done. And so here's what you might want to do next, and here's how you call us for help, and so on. By the way, we do use the self-service app as the one and only way that software is distributed to our Macs. So there's no how do I get that application kind of questions. The other thing that we've just recently done is customized Apple's migration assistant, because we have a lot of users that are moving from PC to Mac. And one of the pieces of feedback we got was, well, who's going to move my data over? And you sort of think, well, nobody. Where have you ever worked that happened? But, but it would be nice to be able to do that, to make that an easier transition. And as you all know, once you're on a Mac, you don't have that problem. So anyway, the team's done a great job customizing this, and it's a little bit cropped here because it's kind of taken from a VMware window. But you know, there's a Mac component and a PC component, and it kind of gathers up all the data, puts it over on the PC side, and then unpacks it on the Mac and puts it in the right folders. Because we have a lot of applications that store things in unusual places, and so in fairness to the employees, some of that migration is a little tricky with mail profiles and things like that. So I talked about how the Mac at IBM program is about a lot more than just giving people Macs, and one of the great things that the Mac does is it becomes kind of a forcing function for improving the total experience, not just the Mac experience, but what are all of the things that you have to interact with as an employee in the course of doing your job, and how do we make those things better? And so here's a snapshot of the tool that we use within IBM. When you're due for a new laptop, you get this email that says, that your time has come, and you click on this link and then pick which machine you want to have. This is what that looked like before we launched Mac at IBM. This is what it looked like after. This is what the tool looked like after you logged in before. This is what the tool looks like now. So just a lot more intuitive what's happening. The other thing we thought was, well, if we are not having an IBM image of OS X, and you're going to get a shrink-wrapped Mac because we're buying the same Mac that you could wander into any Apple store and buy yourself, how do we kind of preserve that excitement and that experience that you get from Apple.com? And even when you get the device, taking the shrink wrap off and opening it up for the first time, and how can we kind of mirror that experience in the enterprise? And we have done some work to be able to, if you do choose a Mac, send you an email when it's on its way to you, send another email when it arrives, and then send a follow-up email reminding people, here's how you get help if you do need any help. And so, all of these things kind of drive the experience, but they're really designed to avoid a situation where people call and say, I just got my Mac, how do I set it up? In some cases, before they've even opened it, because they don't know, you don't really have to do anything. In countries where we can support this, we do put a printed insert in the box so that when people open up the Mac, even though it's shrink-wrapped, there's still some instructions of here's what's going to happen next. And for most people, it's just turn it on and get connected. And if you do want to manually kick off the process, it's https://setupmymac.ibm.com, which, by the way, any of you can go to here as well. That's out on the public internet. And that allows employees to be able to do this enrollment without having to come into an office or be connected on VPN. So I talked about managing laptops more the way you would expect mobile devices to be managed, and that's something that self-service really gives us, because there's no more confusion about having multiple app stores or distribution points or shared folders. The other thing it does for us is it really simplifies a lot of that process. The legacy experience for requesting entitled software from, let's say, Microsoft Office or Adobe was that you would go to a tool, request it, put in some business justification, your manager gets an email, he or she approves it, it comes back to you and says it's been approved, click here, you go back into this other tool, not to the thing you want to download, but just to log in, and then navigate to your entitled space and download the app. Very different from what we have here, which is if you need Microsoft Office, for example, you just click install. We still handle the license tracking and all those things on the back end, but not expose the end user to that. We had also gotten some feedback from IBMers that a lot of them were not backing up their machines, or at least not in a way that we liked. And that was mostly because they said either it was complicated to do or they incorrectly thought we were doing it for them. And so one of the things we've also done with the Mac at IBM rollout is incorporate Crash Plan for automated backup and recovery. And what we really like about that is it's easy for people to self-serve restore requests. They don't need to call the help desk. So this is probably the number one question I get is like, what about the application? What about the app gap? What about your application stack? And I think what I would say to that is, my own experience is that's much less of a real issue than people make it out to be before you start. This idea of doing a big application stack assessment, I can save you the time. There'll be applications that don't work, but it's a lot fewer than I think is usually asserted. In IBM, our application portfolio is about 3,000 apps. And so what do we do for those? Well, first and foremost, we're never going to have a business case to go in and overhaul 3,000 applications. That just isn't going to happen. But what we can do is bring that data forward into new interfaces, either by way of native apps or web experiences, preferably by way of APIs. And by the way, that's work we have to do to mobile enable these apps anyway, so we get 2 bites at that apple. If that doesn't work, there is the traditional kind of VDI, publish something out as a web application, and then as a last resort, a local hypervisor, Parallels or VMware or something like that. But I think just from our experience, I would say, rather than focus on the people that are telling you the reasons that they can't use a Mac, what we tried to do was focus on the people who want to go on that journey and get velocity with them, as opposed to getting completely drained with the people who don't want to do it in the first place. And just by kind of starting and dealing with these things as they come up, we've been able to get much better traction than spending the next 18 months coming up with reasons not to move forward. We did also make a fairly important decision that the support model was really key to this whole program. And rather than take people who are already supporting PCs and dub them Mac support, that it was really important to hire people that loved the Mac as much as the people who were going to be using them. And I don't have it in here, but we have pictures of some of our help desk people embracing their Mac and smiling from ear to ear. It is just something about the Mac. It's a different kind of breed of people that love it. And so in our environment, we tried to hire a mix of ex-Apple Genius bars and new college hires, and some people with some professional experience with Mac. That's what we did. We based them in Austin, Texas, as well as Bratislava. And so how's it going? So as I said, we started on June 1st. By the way, the title of this session is not totally accurate. It's not been 6 months. It's been, I don't know, quick math, June 1st to now, maybe 4 months. So we're deploying about 1,900 Macs per week. That plus the iOS environment is about 130,000 devices. So if you call the help desk and you have a question about iOS or OS X, you go to this help desk. It's a total staff of 24 people, which is an order of magnitude or more fewer people than we would see in a traditional PC support model. Now, by the way, that's not enough people. We do need to hire more people. And we're hiring more people, but because it's so important that we hire the right people, we've been really careful about who we put in that role. That's a support ratio of 1 to 5,300, which is just nuts, right? And so you would probably expect to see really poor CSAT, right? They're probably inundated with calls. You can have long wait times. And yet, what do we see? 85% CSAT. By the way, it's 90% overall satisfied or very satisfied with the skill level of the person they spoke to. And I didn't put it up here because for various reasons, but that's a much higher CSAT than I see on the PC help desk. And why is that? I think it has a lot to do with this. That when you do get through to this help desk, you actually talk to somebody that can resolve your problem. You don't get sent to Tier 2 or Tier 3 or assigned to a special help desk. You get your problem fixed. By the way, 5% of the Mac users ever call the help desk. 40% of our PC users call the help desk. So because of the way that we're deploying them, there are just simply fewer problems. And also the Mac itself, right? So going back to simplifying things and making it easier for people to self-solve, this was a picture of our old, we call it IT Help Central, so the support site. And I I think even a well-intentioned person that was trying to self-solve a problem, if you went here and clicked on VPN, you would have seen 90 text links, and you probably would have said, I don't know, I honestly tried, but I'm just going to call the help desk. This is what that looks like today as part of the Mac at IBM overhaul. A couple of the other things that we tried to take back from our time with Apple was the concept of using short 30-second videos as opposed to very long technical documents that show every possible thing you might need to know, but instead just highlight the big touch points of things you actually have to do, put them in these short videos. That seems to work well for people. Some of the other things we've done on this is remembering your session state. So if you're in the middle of resolving a problem, if you close the browser window and come back in later or come back in on a different channel, it picks up where you left off. And also this concept of showing the minimum amount of information you need for the thing that you're trying to do. And so here you see it's kind of a step-through wizard and only showing you that kind of bite-sized chunks at a time. When I talked about the app gap, probably one of the best examples of how we're dealing with that is something called Manager Hub. So if you're a manager at IBM, like I'm sure at a lot of your companies, you have to interact with a lot of legacy systems, whether it's for performance management, compensation, access revalidations, etc. All of those are in different tools. And we've gotten feedback from people that have said, you know, I'm spending a lot of time doing administrivia, and it's starting to eat into the time that I would like to be using to actually manage my team. And so here's an example of pulling a lot of that data forward into a new experience where you can aggregate some of this stuff and not worry about the back-end legacy application, but just create something new in front of it. And so that's what we've done with Manager Hub. There's a browser-based experience that you see there. And then we've also built a native iOS app for iPad and iPhone. And there you get notifications for things that require your attention, and then you can actually resolve them directly from the mobile device as well. This was our enterprise directory lookup on the intranet, which is probably the most heavily used part of our intranet, called W3. It gets about 500,000 lookup requests per day. And it really had not changed in close to 13 years. So, I mean, in one sense, that's a pretty good testament to it worked, but I don't have to say a whole lot about it. There's the before and after. This was what the results page looked like. This is what it looks like now. You can see things like, you know, where I work, who reports to me, who I report to, office location, and so on. We did also do some work to make sure that that was responsive and would look acceptable on any device. Although ideally, what we would like to do is have people use the native app, which we've also built, called Blue Pages Plus Mobile. And because Blue Pages is really well known within IBM, everybody knows what it is. It's our employee directory. And so we built a mobile app, and it's Touch ID enabled. You can search for somebody by typing their name or by speaking their name. This is what the results look like. And it's taking advantage also of some of the unique features of the device. So you can use the camera on the phone to update your profile picture. You can use the GPS to get navigation instructions to an IBM Office or another IBMer that has this app installed. We have also enabled it for the watch. Another app that we built is, we got feedback from people that said they don't like the password policy requirement on their phone, and one of the main reasons they don't like it is that when they're dialing into conference calls, that's difficult to do when they're driving, and so one of the things we've tried to do to make that easier for people is an app to help you call into the conference calls within IBM. There are some apps that do things similar to this. This is just highly tuned to IBM's environment and the way that the meeting invites are constructed, and we continue to improve the logic for parsing out the moderator and participant passcode. By the way, you'll see there that you can dial in either using the built-in phone or something called the IBM soft phone, which is this, which is a, maybe it needs a little bit of UI cleanup, but it makes it possible to make voice calls over IP using the Wi-Fi network. So if I travel, for example, to China, and I get on the hotel Wi-Fi, if I need to dial into an hour-long conference call, I can do it with this app at virtually no cost. And because it also is aware of my home country, I can dial the number as if I were at home. I don't need to know the dialing construct for the country that I'm in. So the business case so far, as I mentioned, we started June 1st, so some of this is still a work in progress. What I would say is the longer that this program runs, the more compelling the business case becomes. And so let's go through these. So the cost of the workstation, Macs are more expensive. That's kind of the traditional thing. They are more expensive, but they hold their value very differently. And 3 or 4 years into the Mac, it's still worth quite a bit of money. And so, you know, at least in our environment, even if you did nothing else but moved from buying a PC every 4 years to leasing a Mac, that kind of worked out to be cost neutral for us. Then you bake in some of these other things, and you start putting together a pretty compelling business case. Not needing an image, that's a huge part of the business case for us. The cost avoidance of things that we don't need to do on the Mac. The imaging environment on a traditional PC side, it's a lot of people. It creates complexity in the supply chain. You have to buy the laptops, bring them somewhere and image them, then store them until somebody needs them. All of that is stuff that we don't have to do because of the thin imaging technology of Casper that we can leverage. The support staff ratio, that we just need a lot fewer people to support those machines. It has a positive impact on our ability to attract and retain people that we want to hire. And you know, I don't have a dollar figure on here yet that we're ready to share, but I can confidently say every Mac that we buy is making and saving IBM money. The incremental purchase price of the Mac definitely is paying for itself and then some in reduced support burden. Other things that might be somewhat of interest, so we do have our Casper environment out on the internet, as I mentioned, so that people can connect to it without being in the office. The files are hosted on Akamai today, and that's really mostly for performance reasons because you know, some of those files are large, a gig plus, and we want that to go as quickly as possible. We do have 3 separate environments, development, test, and production. And the other thing I would say is the team has done a really fantastic job of having the help desk feed the whip queue for the engineering team. So the help desk is sort of the early listening radar for problems coming into the environment that then move their way back over into the engineering team for problem resolution. And that's really been a very effective cycle as opposed to just getting the same help desk tickets all over and over again. So what's next? We're going to continue to grow the Mac at IBM program. As I said, what we're seeing is every Mac that we're deploying is a net savings to the corporation. We're going to take some of those savings and move from a traditional help desk setup that we have today to more of a Genius Bar-like installation in key IBM offices, both for reservation appointments and walk-up service. And reinvest also some of those savings into some advanced help desk technologies like Hold My Place in Line and Callback and Watson for voice recognition and cognitive learning of what people are calling for and things like that. So as I mentioned, the team that actually did all of this is here in the room, right here in the front row. And so I think when we get to the Q&A, you know, they're here as well and can help answer any questions that people might have. And thank you all for your time.